Welcome to the CG Pro Podcast. This is episode 80 with Ryan Reeb. And if you enjoy what you hear today, you can follow more about what CG Pro is up to by checking out our website, becomecgpro.com, and joining our Facebook group. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce briefly Ryan, who's been a friend for a good number of years. We've worked together in visual effects at Zoic. He comes from the world of visual effects, but has also been exploring lately a lot of the new things that we can do with graphics, and especially into the AI realm. Your job title now, I believe, is head of AI and VFX, which is an interesting new sounding job title.
Getting longer and longer. The rack of hats is getting very full. I don't know what I do anymore, honestly.
Me too. Well, it's great to have you here today. Thanks for being a part of this.
For sure. Thanks for having me, man. We've been talking about it for a minute. It's good to be here.
Yeah, we're like busy lives, but it's great that we managed to get this together. It's great to have you on here and get into the chat. So I'd love to start this off just before we get into all the fancy new modern tech that's happening right now. Just talk a little bit about some of the early days of when you were exploring film and graphics, and kind of how you stumbled into this, or was it a childhood dream? Like how did you get going?
Well, first you have to start by your band has to break up, and that dream has to go away. Well, I was sharing a warehouse with my band and a guy who was a producer coordinator at Digital Domain, and he called me up one day and he's like, "Hey, if you want an internship, you got to get out here next week." And I was like, oh my God. Digital Domain was just like my dream. I knew about it from college, just reading they put out a coffee table book that had a bunch of like the Terminator 2 Disney ride, the 3D ride graphics in it, and a bunch of behind the scenes of other stuff that they did that year. And I was obsessed. So I dropped everything I was doing, dropped out of school, aside from taking one online class, which kept me enrolled. And I lugged my whole CRT computer and lived out of a Rent-A-Wreck. There's a company out here called Rent-A-Wreck, and I lived out of it with my computer and crashed on different people's floors during my internship. And started out by interning at Digital Domain and got probably the best boot camp experience you can get from those guys over there. And then slowly worked my way through every role, from like roto artist to 3D tracking artist, match mover, camera TD, modeler, texturer, lighter, look dev, compositing, on-set VFX soup, all the way to running and building departments at different companies. I helped build with Tim Hansen and Brendan Fayette, which was eventually the studio inside of Bad Robot for Star Wars Episode 7. We built out a studio inside of Simon West Productions with a really good dude, Yarin Manis, brilliant guy. And then at Locked Editorial and Step Studios, helped them grow from literally a corner of the office into like cloud rendering on AWS, Deadline on-prem render farm, multiple workstations, teams of artists in different parts of the world, working with directors and EPs and yada, yada, yada. And then that, around a year ago, I went to the GTC convention that NVIDIA hosts, the robots that walked out on stage. And I went there for a week and treated it like a college masterclass. Just like laptop, taking notes, sending photos from my phone to building decks in real time. And I met some Web3 guys, and what they were doing sounded innovative. They were using Unreal Engine and creating NFTs out of moments in gameplay, and taking interoperable characters from game to game to game and using AI to make them talk, and you can train your character. And to me, that was fascinating because it was so far outside of my scope of understanding with VFX that I had to learn more. So I've been working in the AI crypto gaming space. And I guess when you get to this point, you're like, what do you do? So I'm a partner in a post-production company called No Mercy Studio. And we do virtual production jobs and VFX and car commercials. And we've been working with like AMP Mobility, Nike and We're doing a Kia commercial, shooting a virtual production in 2 weeks. And yeah, there's a lot happening, a lot of AI stuff. Started entering AI film competitions and then getting on stage and talking to people. And like bringing VFX to the AI world seems to be a superpower too. So there's a lot of different directions life has taken me, and I'm just kind of saying yes to all of it right now, and it seems to be working. So
Awesome. Well,
yeah.
but going back to the beginning of that for a second. So in the beginning, was was it something? Was there something that inspired you to want to kind of start, or like something that helped you, like want to go down the rabbit hole through digital domain and into visual effects? Was there like an inspiration, a movie, or something that like lit you up and made you want to go there?
Yeah, it was my high school art teacher. I was I wasn't a bad kid. I was a good kid, but I didn't like this one class, and I would skip, right, and I would skip into the art class, and it was a digital art class. I had no idea what it was, and the teacher didn't mind me being there, and he told me, he goes, if you're going to stay in here, you're going to use this, and he gave me a Wacom tablet in my junior year of high school. And then from there it was all downhill. Like I won best digital portfolio. He got me switched out of the class I was skipping and into his. And then I went to art college, and then they played us a VHS tape of Alias Wavefront, and it was people being interviewed at Digital Domain in the video. It was I'll never forget. They wheel in the cart. It's like the VHS bolted down to the CRT TV, and I saw like a lattice moving polygons, and I was just like jaw on the floor, like, what is this? I have to do this. And then so I just started with Digital Domain and just went there as an intern. And then I had one semester left of school, and my parents were like, no, you have to finish school. And they wanted to bring me on as a modeler to Day After Tomorrow
Mm.
and a texture painter, because I was training under Brian Ripley and Mark Pereira. They were like showing me the ropes. I annoyed them enough for them to show me some stuff. And my parents were like, no, you have to come home and finish, or we're never going to talk to you again. And I
Right.
like was devastated. And it was like, can't work at Digital Domain. Got to go home back to Florida. So finished school and immediately came back and like bugged everyone I could just get access to the training room at DD. And I went in every day and didn't get hired, but they let me sit there and learn camera tracking. So I studied their software and track, just read the PDFs. I learned how to use Nuke when it was all Node command line Linux commands. And then that
When it was
turned
their own
into,
software as well. Yeah.
yeah, it was like Nuke was just lines of text in a terminal, and then you would get little nodes pop up, and that turned into what it is today. It was unbelievably different, but kind of the same functionally. And then yeah, did way too much 3D tracking. Like, so glad that AI has virtually removed that stage of the process, because no one really wanted to do it anyway. People just got good at it, and then they're like, oh, I can make money. But I mean, how long can you use any technology until it gets better?
That was my first job as well. Harry Potter was match move on Harry Potter, and I lasted for a couple of
Yeah.
weeks. Like, I'm not doing this. If this is what it is, then I'm going to go do something else. Yeah, totally resonate with that. There's a lot to unpack in that, but it sounds like the inspiration of a good teacher was the genesis, and then you really understanding that was something you should really pursue. Knowing, was there like a feeling that it had with it that made you know that that's what you wanted to do? Can you like boil it down to a feeling?
I mean, I wasn't what you called a cool kid growing up. All my friends were nerds I met on dial-up bulletin boards, and we would like hack into LakerNet, or they had funny names back then, like the Land of Dementia or the Floating Pancreas. So like BBSs you dial into, and then you'll all be like, let's go play pool somewhere in real life. So just like being good at computers, when I discovered I could like combine being an artist with being good at computers, it just felt like a calling, you
Mm.
know? And I just, having a good person in my life who was a mentor really kind of set me on the path. His name was Mr. Fischetti. We call him Mr. Fish. And his son's also a flame artist now somewhere in the world, Pete. And he's a cool dude. But yeah, his dad really, if it wasn't for him, I don't know what I'd be doing with my life right now, to be honest. Like, I always loved film. I loved Tim Burton and Peter Jackson movies, and watching all the special effects. And I think it was Bad Taste which really like
Mm.
put the love of filmmaking in my heart. I thought like what you could do with puppetry and VFX, somewhere where like the handoff happens from the live action weird thing to the computer generated weird thing, when you can make that seamless, to me that really spoke to me. So yeah, 3D
Right.
tracking was cool. I was down because yeah, you could stick CG stuff to the real world and tell a story with it.
I
And
couldn't believe it when he got the gig for Lord of the Rings. I'm like, that guy? I'm like,
I know that
wow.
was
But man, you come a long way. And I love those movies too. It's just really interesting to hear you talking about the moment of inspiration, because a lot of people running a school is basically a lot of people who are trying to get into things when you meet running a school, and most of them are following a dream or a feeling or some idea. So it's just really interesting to hear when you can really get in touch with that, because a lot of people pursue things that they think they should, or what their parents say, or what society says. But when you have something like that, that's a real genuine internal reaction to something, that's like a feeling, that's always been for me the best guide that I've ever had. And just interesting to hear that was
100%.
same for you. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe my parents have been bummed out about it, but I've always followed my heart. Everything. If it's something that makes me feel good and I can turn it into I mean, in retrospect, I don't regret a day of it. I've raised two beautiful boys, and I've put a really smart woman through law school, and all from making art, from following your heart. Sure, I'm not like living up rodeo, but I've we have a very sustainable lifestyle despite the fluctuations in the industry. You have to learn how to be nimble. And RTFM, every time a new application comes out, and you're probably good if you know how to use computers. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
As you bring that up, that's definitely something which I think is really important to talk about right now, and something that I've definitely been through a lot, being getting invited to go to ILM and suddenly having to do shots on their proprietary software in a few days.
Yeah,
Is a You realize then that sometimes things like that are going to happen. You're going to have to learn something, not just learn something, but learn it really quick. What are you sort of seeing going on at the moment? You're very curious person, and following your intuition and your instinct, and being curious about the advances, which is a good thing, rather than having to catch up. You're very actively pursuing them. What are you seeing kind of happening out there in the world of computer graphics right now?
whew, that's a loaded one. A lot. I've seen more now. I mean, to sum it all up, there's no summing it all up. I guess going from the last question, what you learn in school is good. It helps you fulfill your creative endeavors, but you have to learn how to just not be rigid and be flexible, I guess. Be open-minded to learning new stuff, and that the stuff they taught you in school kind of unlocked that part of your brain that helps solve the puzzles, because like you said, your first job, you were handed a software, and you probably were handed a PDF or a link to some rudimentary HTML site that showed you where to click to do what. But it's really just knowing how computers think and how they work, and then you get the pretty images out of it. I I know a lot of people won't like to hear this, but for my entire career, I feel like I've been right behind the wave of all the awesome stuff. With like, I got to DD kind of right as the lights were being shut off from the party, that was there the
Yes,
years
I
before
felt the
me.
same.
It
Yeah.
felt the same at Asylum VFX, where all roads can kind of be traced back to Asylum, but I feel like I got there right as the water from the ocean dried and the sand and dust of salt residues washing off the keyboards. Like, the party happened before I got there. So I had to relearn new software every 3 years. Like, everything I learned in school, I had to relearn 3 years later. And then 3 years later at this company, at this pipeline, for Rhythm and Hughes' proprietary tools, to Digital Domain's proprietary tools, to ImageWorks' proprietary tools. And now everyone's up in arms and they're grumpy, their arms are crossed, they're kicking rocks, and they're mad about AI. And I'm like, welcome to my life. Welcome. Now everyone who's been complacent for the past 20 years has to do what all VFX people have been doing. So it's shocking to me that the VFX people are among the most grumpy. They might have thought for once they finally got settled into a career and they could stop reading the manual, but no, the whole world has to read the white paper now, has to read the roadmap, has to read what NVIDIA's plan is for 5 years from now, and like read that stuff. You know, don't be afraid of it. If you're afraid of it, you're just going to get wrapped up in a package and left under the tree. You know, you're going over there.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned the sort of human aspect there, that people really want to feel like they can predict what's going to happen. They need that kind of comfort, knowing how tomorrow is going to be or the next year, for security purposes. But then also something else happens, which is when it's too predictable and too comfortable, people get bored, and that's when passion tends to drop in careers. Is usually that moment where things become formulaic or bored. So it's an interesting kind of duality there that people have for the most part. What what do maybe you can talk a little bit about some of the projects that you've loved. Like, do you have a favorite project that you've worked on or over the
Oh
years in
man.
visual effects?
Yeah, I mean, it's really more about the people you meet along the way.
Yeah,
I've met some of my lifetime best friends sitting next to them at 2 in the morning, trying to get a render farm to come back online, you know?
yeah,
But it's just like, I gotta say, even going back to DD was fun. There was a mojo at DD during a time, and there was an energy in the room, and you had some very smart people and some very creative people and some very weird people all doing the same thing. It was kind of magic, you know? Um, the Hugh Jackman movie, the fighting robots, was really fun. Yeah, Jackie DD was awesome. But yeah, what was it? Real Steel. Real Steel was a good one. I mean, Star Wars is a great one. You know, being at the front end of something like that. I only got to touch a couple shots on Star Wars Episode 7. It was like the initial trailer shots, and then I was on to a Star Trek project. But yeah, that was a good one. But being excited is something that, yeah, when you're right out of school and you got all these new tools, you want to put them to use. You might not get your dream job, but you might get a giant deck of information you have to learn to kind of do something similar to your dream job. But if you just stay the course, you get to it. And the excitement changes and it ebbs and flows. And I mean, I did get jaded for a while there. And even most recently, being added to like the Luma Dream Machine Creator, they keep changing the name of it, but it's like their creators program. And we just got to beta test the new boards functionality and the new image creation model. And I got to tell you, I've spent 48 hours in the past week just smiling, being able to create stuff. Like I have tattoos. So one of my tattoo artists and we tried to do a Kickstarter project for an animated short film. And, you know, we built a bunch of models, got a bunch of people excited, and then realized just how daunting it is to do 5 to 10 minutes of CG by yourself without a company. But now all that art exists. I can bring life to a project that I was really into and I just couldn't achieve because of like,
yeah.
I don't know, just,
Complexity. Yeah, just
yeah,
the
there's
amount of
so many.
hours, and you don't have those hours because you're at work doing the job, and you try and go home at 10 o'clock at night and find some extra energy or enthusiasm for doing your own project. It's difficult for sure.
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah,
super exciting, but it's beautiful. Like people are so scared of this AI stuff, but like the look of AI and the look of like feature animation, like Illumination, Pixar, DreamWorks, Disney style, combined with AI, it feels like you're playing with superpowers. It's like not everything's going to be beautiful, but everything's basically matte painting quality or above with some motion into it. So the days of setting up projection matte paintings and animating them and spending a week on it, and maybe with the budget you have, you get 2 or 3 variations of it. Those days are over. You get thousands of variations until like maybe you're a character artist, right? And you've sculpted and rigged and modeled and looked at a really cool character, but you're not a great environment artist. But now you can build environments and you can cut them out in Photoshop and do planar animations with them now, like it's an amazing fun time. I'm having fun again. I'm still doing what I've always done, but having more fun because I could do what other parts of the pipeline did that I wasn't great at. Now I can be great at those parts and then lean into my strengths where I was good, which was like surfacing and modeling, texturing, lighting, look dev, kind of where I love to be, but wasn't a great character animator. And then I learned Move AI and Wonder Dynamics. Now I'm a decent character animator. So.
That's cool. Yeah, I remember we met at Zoic on Orville, doing look development and modeling and building spaceships and having a lot of fun with that. And being so what you were just saying, I think is important. The fact that there's a fun being unlocked with some of the new tools that you're exploring and experiencing. That's definitely something I felt as well going through virtual virtual production and being able to look at things in real time, being able to change things in real time. What is it that's making it fun? What are the kind of aspects of it that are making it more fun?
I think it's and not trying to like sound too egoist or anything, but I've always like viewed myself as a director, and what that title means now I think is completely derailed. I think it's disrupted. But being able to it's a blessing and a curse to have an idea and see it fully realized and then not being able to pull it out of your head because you don't have enough tools. I'm not a concept painter. I can draw, I can paint, I can use oils and pastels and gouache, and I can do all the basics. I'm decent, but I'm no Nick Hyatt. I am no Max Berman. I'm no Daniel Thron. Those guys are legends and they're good. I never got to that level, but now with these tools, I can take what I am good at with the assist of these computers, like these apps, and it really does create a cool look. And it's just a matter of months until you start seeing streaming content that's really utilizing like the combination of CG and AI. There's going to be a big market for this stuff. And it's fun to be able to like see your ideas finally. Like I'm bringing projects back to life that I put into deck form. I pitched a music video to the Shins that they didn't like, but I liked. So I got to make that using AI now. And sure, I'm not necessarily in love with it, but I got to see it fully realized. And I'm bringing some projects back to life now that I never thought would see the light of day. And it's both rewarding, it's satisfying, it feels good, and I'm still doing the traditional stuff. We're producing jobs, building out budgets, building teams, renting virtual production stages and hiring crews and CG artists, So yeah, it's a weird world we're in, and it feels like I'm kind of at like peak freelancer, or I don't know what you even call it. It's when the owner of LinkedIn says the 40 an hour work week is dead by 2025, then you're entering this like Build-A-Bear career, and I feel like I've been in this Build-A-Bear career where I work with my AI crypto gaming project Conducts, and then there's No Mercy Studio, and then there's Fabric AI and Curious Refuge, and there's all these different other companies that I can't really name right now that I've been talking to, and studios I've been talking to, consulting with, and it's like multiple streams of income rather than just punching the clock at DD. So it's starting to be fun again,
And where does the fun come from? Is it the variety? Is it the newness? Is it the learning? What's making it the most fun?
I think it's the variety and the newness. I mean, anyone that's sat in front of Unreal or Maya or Houdini, and you're just banging your head at, I've been doing this thing over and over, and I've done it so many times. Why is it not working this time? That's not fun. And when you do the same thing, and then you sit in the theater and you watch your months of work go by in 4 seconds, and you're like, okay. There's always a trench 3 months into a job where you're like, oh, I don't even want to be here. I just want to be with my kids. I just want to be with my girlfriend. I want to be with my wife. I want to be with my partner. I want to be with my dog. And you're like in the office and your friends aren't there. That's not fun. I think being nimble, and in VFX and feature animation, there's 150,000 steps to get from concept to picture, right? And AI, I think, and Unreal, very much so, and AI combined are going to be a mega force, but they remove 80,000 of those steps, but you still have 20,000 steps. So it's not something you should be afraid of. Rather, it's something you should refocus your mind that you're not just a cog in a pipeline. You can be a whole pipeline, and you can be a sequence engineer, or name it what you want. But like, if you're a creative person and you got into a creative field, you're going to have a whole tool belt. Unreal. I love Maya. People think Maya's outdated. Cool. Like, I know what I can do with it, and I know what clients want, and I know how to put together a bid and talk to clients and get a job. And I think everyone's going to kind of be on a level playing field where you're no longer just like a CG generalist, but you're a brand, and I hate saying that word. I'm very not into influencer culture or the talking head culture on panels. It's like, I love doing it, but I like the careers in making the art for me, not in talking about the art. Even it's kind of oxymoron that here we are on a podcast.
Here we are talking about.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
talking about it. That's even better.
Yeah.
So what do you think is going to be important for? Well, I got too many questions. One would be, what do you think is going to be important for people to focus on as we're going through everybody? I think everybody I'm noticing out there, there's a lot of excitement via all of the things about what's showing up. People are concerned with technologies that they're very familiar with being subverted, or like as they always have been, or replaced, or whole modalities being replaced. What do
I'm
you
into
think?
it. Get
What
out
do
of
you,
here. Out with the
no,
old.
I know that you're into it. I'm just more
Yeah.
curious about, what do you think it's going to be important for people to focus on, given that seems
Okay.
to be happening, or let's assume that it's all happening. What do you think becomes the skill sets that people should be focusing on moving forwards?
The skill sets I think have helped me a lot, especially in the past 7 years. I had a sea change in my whole life ideology where it's like there's always something bad to talk about, always something negative to talk about. Cool, no one wants to hear that. Even in like the darkest hour, like there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and if you focus on that, you're going to be good. That, I think, people need to collectively wake up. I also maybe I sound like a bit of an evangelist here, but beyond the whole crypto thing, I firmly believe creators, whether it's AI or CG AI or VFX AI, I think getting comfortable with a Web3 mentality where you're going to have a wallet that connects to whatever you're doing, whether it's shopping or creating, and you're going to be exchanging in a different currency. You're going to see, when you hear companies like BlackRock talking about tokenizing everything, I mean, I spend a good portion of my day discussing with companies how to tokenize assets, all in an effort to get artists paid. You're seeing a huge trend right now with like people like Dave Clark and Meta Puppet and people using Sora and all these other cool AI tools. But the majority of people are paying to use these tools. If not, they're being given credits or on creator programs like Runway or Luma, and they're kind of getting investor funding to pay you to work for them. But I'm trying to solve the puzzle of how to pay the artists. If you can figure out how to pay the artists, all the other tools are now set up to create this new ecosystem where you connect your wallet to Maya, or you connect your wallet to an AI web portal, and you start collaborating with artists there. It's just staying nimble and being comfortable knowing what you're good at. And knowing it's going to be outdated by the time you master it. And this is a hard thing to communicate. And I didn't realize until I went to GTC this year, where I went there knowing my old career was over. I just knew it. And the new career was on the horizon. And then I'm in all these talks with people PhD level people writing white papers and talking in terms I have no idea what they mean. So I'm just taking notes. But the thing that clicked for me is that every single person was using language I was familiar with, like normal mapping and USD files and shading and rendering and frames per second. And it started to click to me that all this AI stuff, every single company, if you have a VFX skill set, it is 100% portable into the AI space. But they would rather be consumed with being pissed off about it, that they're just like blinded with rage and they don't understand this unbelievable opportunity that's like right in front of them.
Well, so in that, given, let's assume this is where it's going, and you're describing embracing it as a visual effects artist and how those skills are portable. How can you describe how they are portable and how
Yeah.
to approach that? If you're, say, a VFX artist, how should you embrace?
Do you want me to speak to the kids, or do you want me to speak to the grumpy old men?
Well, the adults, grumpy or not, because
Okay.
they're
It's
a
no
mix of both.
different. It's
But
no
both.
different than if
Actually,
you came
both.
of age sculpting with clay and plugging follicles into latex and silicone and airbrushing it to make a mask. And then that same person learned ZBrush. That same person learned Maya or Wavefront and prisms, and then that became Houdini and Maya. And it's like, if you're just complacent, the guys who didn't learn ZBrush are still plugging follicles right now. And how many of those guys are left?
So what does that mean in terms, just completely practically? What should the visual effects artist who learned Maya now be doing?
Well, it's interesting. I had this conversation recently. A friend of mine, Todd Terrazas, he runs AI on the Lot,
Yeah.
and AILA and Fabric AI. He had these awesome, great community, joined that community as well. He had these great meetups at his beach house, and I was talking to a cinematographer who'd shot Mandalorian and some other stuff. And he was like, "What am I supposed to do?" I'm like, "You're a cinematographer. You have years of training your eye from coffee table books and Criterion Collection. And maybe that's Maya and Photoshop to a CG artist, but it's like those skills are valued, whether it's an audio engineer or this famous DP. Like, the audio engineer is not going to know how to prompt something to the level that the DP is. I just said, stay doing what you're good at and learn new stuff along the way. That's what CG people have been doing our whole lives. I think we just stay doing the same thing and don't get comfortable. As soon as you get comfortable, you're dead.
So any specific things that people could focus on, things to look out for as a person being interested in, or being a visual effects artist wanting to keep up?
Yeah, learn how to incorporate AI into your existing workflow. Like, if you're an Unreal Engine artist, learn Move AI, learn how to use Cascader, something like that will help you not sit there all night banging your head against a desk. Instead of hiring a team in India to do the work, learn 3 apps that'll do the work for you, and then put your skills find what you're not good at and find a tool to replace that part of your skill set. That's what I'm doing. I don't know if I have the answer, but that's what I'm doing.
So
I did this really cool project using Unreal, and I think at the time it was Runway Gen 2. And it was unbelievable because I just used the ships. What's his name? Andrew Kramer's ships. I keep throwing out all the legends here. Andrew Kramer released a bunch of Star Wars vehicles, and I just re-look dev'd them, put a new coat of paint on them, and then animated them in Unreal, which I'd never done before. I watched a few tutorials. I watched some of your stuff. I, talked to Scott Rosecrans a little bit, and figured out my way enough into Unreal to where I was able to sell something passable. And then for the backgrounds and the explosions and everything, I incorporated AI, and it looked cool. It looked somewhere between a Neil Gaiman Sandman graphic novel and Star Wars Clone Wars, both which are marketable properties. So whoever's going to tell you that it's not believable, sure. If you're trying to recreate something very specific that a 35 millimeter camera created, you're not going to do the same thing. That doesn't mean you can't make something that's really engaging and beautiful, you know? And I think we're going to see a nice little span of time where AI and CG weave together very elegantly. I think real-time stuff, Unreal, Unity, AI. I mean, you don't even have to be a modeler anymore to manipulate models. With softwares like Meshy, you just create
Yep.
an image, dump it into Meshy, and if you have any 3D skills at all, you can clean it up enough or add a layer of agreeables on top of it, you know? You don't have to spend like 18 hours starting from Z spheres anymore. You can generate a whole scene, a whole environment. And pretty soon we're gonna have environments on the fly, but there's always gonna be something humans want that's more, whatever. Like, take a traditional commercial pipeline right now. Anyone can go out and film a commercial. Why do you hire a company like Step? Because you get a level of premium. Why do you hire No Mercy? You get a layer of premium that somebody's willing to pay for. So have the computers do what they can for you, and then what you love to do, that be the premium level that people are willing to pay for.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what that level of premium continues to look like as all of this stuff changes. I'd love to ask also about that other group that you mentioned, the people are very, very curious, people who have not got into the industry yet at all. And there's a lot of concern and probably excitement, but definitely for that group who are just at the beginning, they're not talking about converting a skill set or using things that they've already seasoned over decades. What do you have any kind of thoughts or advice for people who are just starting out?
You know, I've thought about this for a while. Even today, you can go to CalArts and spend thousands of dollars to learn how to play the piano. I mean, we've had synthesizers and MIDI keyboards for how long, but you can still go become a classically trained musician and you can be great at it and people will want to hear it. I don't see why any other artisan tool is going to be any different. You know, 10 years from now, you'll probably still want that look that only V-Ray and Maya can do for some part of the pipeline, you know?
Say you're a kid and you're starting out and you're looking at this field, um, whether that's visual effects or what that becomes, or computer graphics in the broadest sense. What are some of the things you would focus on to help you kind of empower you for a future in this? I think it's hard to predict the future, but taking the best guess.
Yeah, I mean, my immediate go-to is going to obviously be my kid, like my oldest son, Ollie. I've been showing him how to do 3D stuff since he could talk, you know, but now he doesn't really have and if he does, he doesn't show me an interest in doing what I do necessarily. But the other day we had a conversation about digital twins and CAD and 3D printing and building. He's in a robotics class, so it's like he might need to learn some traditional skills to help fill in the gaps for the stuff they teach him in school, you know? Like maybe knowing how topology and edge flow works, he could clean something up or know that something needs to be rerun through another AI tool that does it for you. But I don't, I mean, it's tough. We're definitely not plotting points on a vector graph to create animated vectors anymore. We don't even think about it. You just squiggle a line and it does a whole bunch of math under the hood. We will get there. And when we get there, no one's going to want to do what we're doing anyway. We're going to be wanting to push the bar further. So I don't know. Stay nimble, stay creative, and stay hungry.
So what would you learn if let's say you're a kid at school, you're looking at a bunch of classes you can take in math or drawing or sculpting or learning Maya or what would be some things that you would focus on, given that we don't really know entirely where this is going? What would you learn? What would you say to your kid to focus on?
I mean, I could tell what I've said. I've said go to CG Pro and sign up for the Intro to Unreal courses.
Is the right answer.
There's a couple other similar situations that I won't mention, but CG Pro is definitely the first. Now, but real talk, I don't know.
Is it more like
Let's
the foundational things? Like, would you still encourage drawing, or do you think that
100%,
AI is just going to do
100%.
that for everybody?
I'm a weird person to ask that too, because I still think film school's a great idea.
Yeah,
Like,
I do too.
um,
I think really, if you as you've described, the tools that we've used have changed so much over the years that we're not. If we'd have just focused on learning the tool, to me, that misses the point because the
yeah,
tools will change.
I mean, I've spent an inordinate amount of time reading books, coffee table books, and magazines, and just knowing artist names by, oh, I know what Mark Ryden's style looks like. Oh, I know what Todd Shore's style looks like. So just knowing what artists are good at and like who mastered a certain skill. If you're trying to prompt something and you don't know that stuff, you're going to get a real generic looking thing. It's the same for painters. If you're a painter and you didn't get classically trained and you don't know light, shading, texture, and how to manipulate it, then you're going to make something that looks like it's for sale on the Venice boardwalk. You know what I mean? It's like there's no end to the depth of artistic integrity you can have. So I think if I were going to choose to be a non-technical person in the future, I would just study art. Yeah, definitely traditional art. And sadly to say it, but maybe we're there already, but VFX is maybe a traditional art. Maybe put it up there next to charcoal pencils, but it's not going to go away. It's going to change and be used differently, but it's not going to go away. It's not going to be a useless skill by any stretch of the imagination. Communicating what's in here out to here will never have a shortage of needs for tools.
Yeah, and talking about making imagery is extremely um, uh, it's not very specific. Just talking about things or using words for things is not really enough to
No.
communicate what you're trying to visualize. So in what it sounds like in what you're saying, that really focusing on your the artist, focusing on what makes an artist. What do you
Yeah.
think makes an artist?
Forgive me, I'm a little under the weather. I'm sorry if I'm like running nose. There was a really good example early in my career after my DD experience. I had a really, oh, I'm sorry, it was after my internship experience. I kind of got on this fast track where I went from making like $17 an hour to $45 an hour, but I had to go move to Taiwan and not have any friends, leave my girlfriend, leave my dog, and I took a risk. And there was a moment where we had to deliver 2 television series and a feature film. That was our first set of goals. And I had a team of like 15 people and spoke very broken English, but we had whiteboards all over the office. And my team just wasn't getting it. But they all went to art school and they were all trained. So whiteboards, we didn't need English or Mandarin. We drew. And
Yeah.
so grunting and pointing and drawing and erasing someone else's drawing and drawing over it and grunting and pointing, we delivered 2 TV series and a feature film that way. And by the end, we had our own little off the hip language, and it was cool. But it's the same with any of these tools. Hand someone a render and be like, this highlight here, yeah, from here, you know.
How do you think that we continue to do that with some of the tools that are emerging? Again, it's really hard to, not asking you to predict the future, but um, in terms, maybe more in terms of what you hope it looks like in the future with communicating with the machines and communicating with people in that, which I thought was an excellent example there in how we communicate as artists. We predominantly do it visually. Even if you're English speakers, we're still usually doing it through visuals than through words.
Yeah.
How do you think this? What do you hope it moves to or becomes in us being able to communicate with with AI or with computers in general? I think we're still just trying to ask computers to do our work for us. That to me is the same as it was when I was 8 years old,
Yeah.
as it is now in my 40s. What do you hope the future looks like as an artist?
Oh man. Yeah. There's always a missing piece. That was a bunch of questions in one. One of them I heard, like I was starting to answer it in my head. I was like, well, I think the traditional roles have already been disrupted, and that's where a lot of the animosity is coming from. It's like I'm trying to direct a film that I wrote in 2008. I optioned it. I got like 80 grand for it. it fell apart. We raised almost $1 million. It was going to be my directorial debut. I was going to be on the map, and then it fell apart. And recently, me and this girl, Jagger Waters, have brought it back to life. And I'm like, I'm going to direct that finally. And then I'm like, okay, so directing an AI film, what does that look like? It's not the same. It's like the director is the person creating the imagery, which is the imagery is going directly into the prompting of the movement. So it's like you have to accept that the roles are going to go away. Like if you viewed yourself as a director before, you wanted to twist your mustache and sit at Video Village pointing at the screen, drinking your latte, like bye. Those days are also over. Sure, traditional Hollywood. Maybe not in full, but like accept that the work you do as a creative isn't going to be called what it used to be called. It's going to be different. You're going to be talking to an AI agent. You're going to be talking to a computer, which we've kind of already done. It's just different. It's expedited.
The language was very clunky.
Yeah, language was clunky. I think as an artist, it would be great, even as like a director, it would be great to like think to the computer and see what you're thinking. If you could extract your mind's eye visual and see it. But my philosophy was never in an auteur theory. I think auteurs are just narcissists wrapped in a bow and put in a chair on set. I think the rising tide lifts all ships. And I think the most beautiful stuff I've ever seen has come from collaboration. Like if Ed and I can close our eyes and an AI can merge our idea of the same thing together and we could see it instantly, that would be sick. It's not off the table. I feel like it's 3 to 5 years away.
People are experimenting with it for sure. They're having the thought input as well as text input and video input and all the others.
I saw a man and a woman, Bethany and Louis Pecan. I don't know if you know them, but there was a hackathon I went to recently where 500 artists were broken into like 50 teams. And I wanted to be there. So I convinced Todd to let me be the cameraman. So I walked around and I was like shooting every team, but like interviewing them. What are you doing? I have no idea what you're doing. What are you doing? Everyone's using Cursor to teach themselves Python. So you don't even have to be a coder anymore to use an LLM to write a software for you. And this one team literally it looked like a bike helmet, and they were reading your beta, your theta waves or whatever brain waves they were, and creating that as an input prompt for paraplegic or quadriplegics to communicate to their caregiver that they were hungry, thirsty, or had to go to the bathroom when all they could do is think. And I'm like, that's eventually going to be co-opted and used as a form of creativity. Maybe we sit there and put on our helmets and we think into a streaming platform, and some people are throwing us tokens. You know what I mean? Like that's really not a stretch. That's kind of what we're building at Conducts. It's like,
it's going to be an interesting journey and cool to hear, and fascinating to see what people are experimenting with, what they're doing is where it shows up, right? Not in people talking about it's great, but people doing it and observing the results is where it'll live. We have a few questions here from the audience as well. I just want to make sure we touch on a few of those. This one was answered already. I think someone's asking, I've been using Runway, Dream Machine, MJ. Do you have a top 3 apps to use or learn for Unreal?
For Unreal, oh man. I mean, you have anyone that's opened Unreal, the marketplace is just remarkable. Everything that they dump at the top of the marketplace, you can literally pick your favorite one and start there and work backwards. There's an AI app, and for me recently, we learned how to connect your MetaMask and your Web3 wallet to an Unreal game level, which is going to allow interoperability of characters to go from one game to another. I think that's awesome. I've been spending some time with that and figuring out how to like make that secure. And I think I'm losing the question here.
Oh, somebody's saying, about like, I guess they're talking about AI. I'm not sure if they mean, do you have any like top 3 things to use in conjunction with Unreal in an AI sense, or if they mean just 3 things that are cool in Unreal, 3 apps in Unreal, but maybe the things to use in conjunction with Unreal. You also mentioned like your belief in Unreal ongoing despite the prompt
Yeah,
to image and video.
there was a project I was working on at my last like 9 to 5 job, where the artist next to me, her name was Eve. She was a rock star Unreal Engine artist, and she wasn't denying AI, and I wasn't denying Unreal, but I think we kind of came to a conclusion that Unreal's going to be around for a while, but eventually there will be a tool that is similar to Unreal, but it's not going to have layers and layers and layers of complication to it, or margin of error can happen, human input error can happen. And it might just be plugins coming out for Unreal that you just have to stay up on, you know? I mean, you have your physical
Some
sun and
things like
sky, and you have all these other things that,
Dash that are trying to simplify the user interface into a more like
oh yeah,
discrete input, I guess. Like
yeah,
it's interesting going back to my college degree. My first computer graphics project was to model my lecture theatre, but in Emacs, which is a text editor in Unix. So to plot all the points of the desk
jeez,
numerically, describe the wood grain mathematically, place the camera with like 3 numbers and its lens information, and make it look exactly like a photograph that had been taken of the lecture theatre. My grade was how close pixel to pixel through an algorithm were those 2 pictures. And going through making 3D in that way was horrible. And no, then we've got like things on top of that now, like 3D Studio Max and Maya, and interfaces where we can play and punch this stuff into shape. But now we're talking about, now that's still too clunky and too complicated and too unartistic. And now
yeah.
we're
Which
trying
is
to get,
crazy because what your college thesis was basically how you operate automatic 1111. You're still plotting where you want your AI camera to go, but
yeah.
it's like,
No, exactly. We have these other tools that have had like 30 years of sophistication into how you can actually make a camera, how you can
yeah,
if you want it to be a certain way. We have that control right now. We don't need to reinvent it. Um, I'm definitely interested more in what I have more to ask about that, but we've got 1 or 2 more questions here. I just want to make sure we get through them. Somebody's asking, um, how many hybrid productions do you see? Do you see productions shifting more worldwide? I think is the question. It's like, I guess that
do we
means
mean
the
like using
is
an
production.
international talent pool?
It's interesting. If the person who wants that question wants to ask it again more specifically, feel free.
Sure.
Let's say it's productions shifting more global in a more general sense,
Oh,
like
like mixed
production crew.
media. Like mixed media. I think if it's like a mixed media thing, yeah,
Yeah,
100%. There's already stuff that you've seen that's using AI. It's just done to a level and composited in enough where people aren't aware of it. I mean, hell,
right.
even
Well,
Disney with that show with the Kree and Samuel L. Jackson, as rudimentary as it was, that was 100% runway opening title sequence.
right.
Um,
And even going back through our careers in visual effects, like this is not new to us. We've seen those techniques being used. They're extremely complicated and very hard to use, and yet you had to have a
yeah,
studio invent how to do it to be able to do those things. And we've been,
Avengers Endgame, there wasn't enough rendering power to render Thanos. They used machine learning for in between renders, you know.
yeah,
Ed Elbrook and the magic he's making over at Metaphysic is another. Go watch the new Tom Hanks movie where Tom Hanks basically style transferred himself. He performed multiple ages and kind of in a Benjamin Button style way. They just deep faked him at every age, and it's beyond a little bit more elegant than deep fakes, but I can't get into it. I don't really know. As much as I love Ed, they haven't hired me yet at Metaphysic. Maybe they should.
oh, if you're hearing, um, that's great. Yeah, just it's really interesting question, I think. And the having studied it in 99 AI, now seeing everyone talking about it in a number of years later, 25 years later, it has matured enough for us to the average person to access it, which I think is the interesting thing about right now. And we did have it in visual effects land for a while. It was just very hard to use. Like Maya was the same. You needed a $500,000 machine
Yeah.
and a very expensive software license to be able to use Maya. Not that long ago, same deal.
There's a couple answers I want to give for people that are more like wanting specific tools. So
Yeah.
there was a recent competition I entered, and unfortunately I had to drop out, but it was called the Culver Cup. It was another AILA sponsored, Fabric AI sponsored, kind of like content creating hackathon. And we were given 3D assets by one of the partners, and every team had used the same 3D asset. And if you're using generative AI, you realize like camera control is really tough. But
Yeah.
if you take this 3D asset and you render out just a play blast of the camera, the ability to style transfer CG, even from a rudimentary like sub previs level render, can now start to look very good. So even just using tools inside of Runway like Act 1, and if you are a seasoned 3D artist, spend a little time setting up Comfy UI. There's some really cool tools in Comfy UI that are similar to what they're doing at Metaphysic to achieve that Tom Hanks level of realism. Comfy UI and Unreal are kind of a magical pair that I wouldn't split apart.
Agreed. Shameless plug in there for our upcoming Comfy UI Unreal series in the CG Pro Inner Circle. not intentional, but I'm going to put it in there anyway. This is my
Heck
podcast.
yeah.
So I'm just checking here to see if we've got any more questions here. Yeah, people were definitely curious about tools, specific tools. Somebody else also asked, could you connect your wallet to Unreal or Blender?
Yeah, there's a tool. There's multiple tools in the not Blender, but the Unreal Marketplace. Which so if you're creating a game level, you can make the game level accessible by way of Web3 wallet. I just want to say, don't connect any bank account to a wallet if you're not a pro. If you don't have a dev working with you, I strongly do not recommend it.
Yeah.
But
I've
yes,
definitely got friends who have lost a lot by being careless in the blockchain.
you can. And
But,
if you are good at Unreal and are curious about crypto, then definitely hit me up, because there's an unlimited amount of projects happening where we're working in that space to just make, Ready Player One a reality. That's basically what Conducts is doing. You can look at their Learn section of their website, and it outlines literally step by step of what's happened and where it's going. And there's dozens of other projects on a similar path behind us. But I just see a world where the entire internet is a game layer, and there's going to be no shortage of needs for CG artists. Just look at what happened by the introduction of mobile devices into your life. Just because of the sheer number of screens, there's that much more content that needs to be created. For the amount of screens and headsets and time people are spending on screens, I don't think the fear should be AI is going to take our jobs. It's going to be like, how can we use AI to make as much content look premium as possible? There's more screens than there are content to fill those screens. So don't lose hope or be in fear of AI. It's not, just learn it. Learn it in any way you can, and you will not regret it.
That's definitely the positive stance that I take as well. And a great segue into another question, which is, when you say my old career is over, could you please elaborate on that? Certainly AI is going to be a core element of every industry, but how much would an artist need to know it when in the past a director might not have known anything about how? And then the question cuts off.
I think it's kind of, when I say my old career is over.
Sorry, that was the last part, was when in the past a director might have not have known anything about how to operate a camera, for example.
I mean, basically doing this.
Right.
Now you just do it in Unreal. I mean, prevising out your cameras in Unreal and then running those through a style transfer, putting them into a creative deck is probably the best form of communication ever.
And you can even use your phone to steer the camera in Unreal.
Yeah. So there's a really cool dude out there. His name's Nem Perez. Nem Perez he has a company called Story Blocker, which I would check out if you're into both 3D and AI. the people at Storyblocker are building some really cool stuff. Being able to use your phone, real-time previs out, and then take that recording, drop in AR characters, which you would have to make in CG, you know, or buy or build or whatever, and then you take your CG character into AR, and then you record your actors with it, and then you can run that directly into a style transfer and get frames for either a storyboard or potentially a final render, depending on your medium, you know?
That's cool. We'll definitely be sharing some of these links that you're talking about with the community as well. Jackie,
Cool.
hopefully you're capturing some of those.
Yeah, try.
I am too. But
I mean, there's a lot of great stuff out there, you know, it's not being talked about. I mean, there's companies like Fabric AI that is consulting with all the major studios and building custom tools that will eventually find their way to market, I believe, once NDAs expire and all that stuff. It's just cool to pay attention. I mean, find your on-ramp into the industry, whether it's Unreal or Maya or Houdini or whatever. Unreal is a really robust, great, powerful tool to launch you into this world, you know, and it's an infinitely expanding grab on. I've described it recently on a panel at Infinity Fest of like, it's like a train blowing by you. Just stick your hand out and grab on at any point and then ride the ride, you know?
right. Yeah, this is like people talk about with the housing market in some ways. Like a lot of people try and time that and find the right time to buy a house, and it's usually always a good time. Although there's some moments where it's not, but they're
Yeah.
much rarer. I graduated with a computer science degree in 2001, right? Like I joined it with all the hopes and dreams of the dot-com boom, and then graduated into the dot-com crash, and it was very, very interesting, you know, watching that happen. No, that's just,
Yeah.
I still got a job, I still pursued my career, and everything worked out. But yeah, following, I think a lot of what you said about following what interests you and following the fundamentals, following the what really being an artist really is really good advice. I'm not sure if we have any more questions here. If so, oh, there's one. If someone is asking you to do something with AI, there are essentially, are they essentially asking you to do it cheaper? That's an interesting question.
Oh, no, I disagree with that. There's, okay, I'm going to name drop a couple more communities here if you want to tune in. So Machine Cinema is a great community of artists, and it's such a hodgepodge of editors and sound designers and theater directors and people, and they do meetups at like All Seasons Brewery, and they have started to kind of come together, and I've heard numbers being thrown around, you know, and anywhere from like $300 to $800 a day for generative AI content. And you're like, can you just imagine if you have a robust CG generalist training under your belt in addition to a generative AI, like the rates are starting to become comparable, which I didn't believe until I started hiring people to work on my film. And then I was like, oh my God, you can't, it's not that cheap anymore, you know? So in order to pull off a large scale project, you have to have like credits that are either given to you or bartered for exchange of other services, in addition to paying the people, which I've never pulled off a personal project without paying somebody, or at least bartering equal value trade for trade. But
Yep. Right, that's
yeah,
how it works, right? Yeah, it's everyone's wanting to get something out of putting effort into something. Right? It's interesting, machine cinema and machinima, where, you know, we've been experimenting with trying to make movies with computers in all these ways for a long time, and a lot of evolution of how we do it and the tools we used to do it with. When you're hiring somebody to be an AI artist, or maybe you're not hiring them specifically as that, if they're being asked to be proficient in some of the AI tools, what does that skill set look like? What kinds of things do you look for in a person that you're hiring for something like that?
One thing that's really a good skill that's never going to go away, in my opinion, is compositing. You know, and then the evolution of compositing is being a compositor that has an understanding of a 3D environment. So After Effects, Nuke, Unreal, and then pick 4 AI tools to learn, and I'd say that makes a nice rounded out tool belt, helps get you in somewhere.
Got it. So, but
I,
there's a
I never
definite.
fancied myself as a Python person ever. I mean, I could copy and paste Mel scripts together and get some cool simulation style stuff with Mash and whatever. But now I've got Cursor on my computer, and you can start by just asking Cursor how to do a thing, and it'll give you the links and the workflow, and then create code in a terminal view for you, and you can just start piecing together literally your own applications or swarming AI agents and or whatever it is you want to go. Cursor is a great one.
It's really really interesting because that as a recovering ex software architect is essentially what programmers became, like people scouring the internet looking for clips of good code and then taking them and mashing them together into computer programs. Pretty much no software engineer who contained the entire language or library or the ability in programming. But this takes that idea and turbocharges it. So it'd be interesting to see where that whole field goes.
Yeah.
Being able to use it as an assistant. Usually, I think with imagery and code that what you need to know what's a good end result that the AI has made and know when it's done a good job, so that you can tell
Yeah.
whether it did a good job.
You should
That
tell it
requires
it
some
did a good
sophistication.
job. Somebody out
You
there is
should.
writing
Sorry.
resentment into it.
Yeah, there's like
But
videos on YouTube about why say please to Chat GPT, things like
oh yeah, I've had full conversations apologizing for humanity into ChatGPT just so it remembers not to kill me.
that.
But
Well,
I do want
yeah,
to.
go
There's
ahead.
like a couple quotes I've heard from the same person, and one of them sticks out. But I don't know if you've ever interacted with Andy Cochran.
Yeah, he's a good
Um,
friend. Yeah.
he's a great dude, and he has something I heard him say on a panel once, and it couldn't be more accurate. Like, we're all in a race, and AI gives you a jetpack, and people that are anti-AI are kind of just staging a sit-in at the starting line. Meanwhile, we're just like, bye. And I couldn't agree with that anymore.
Well, definitely good to pay attention to what's going on, be informed. Is there anything? I really appreciate you being here, and getting to have this conversation is amazing, and I hope we get to do it more times. Is there anything else that you want to share with the audience, with the community? Anything that any places they can follow you? Anything that you'd like to leave them with?
Sure. I actually, strangely, I get shy. So like if I don't respond, it's not because I'm being a jerk. But yeah, I'm active on LinkedIn. I'm on actively recruiting for. I've signed a lot of NDAs. There's a couple of big AI companies I'm consulting with and helping build teams for, and I have a feature film that I'm working on with Jagger Waters, and some other people are involved that are pretty cool. And we're always recruiting talent for that. Yeah, hit me up on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter.
Any final thoughts? Any closing advice for people out there?
Yeah, especially if you're a technologist and a creative, just like cherish your dopamine, and every minute you spend scrolling is a minute you could spend watching a tutorial or bettering your life, and you will drain the bank really quick if you just are on a screen all day. I think equal parts, like, be outdoors as much as you are on your computer. Like, you can't create in a vacuum, if you're a creator. And I think everyone that buys into this learning technology as an art form views themselves as a director or a creator or a writer or a visionary. Like, give yourself the grace to like expose yourself to nature, or else don't be generic. You know what I mean? Like, allow your brain to heal from the blue light and then go create.
Fantastic advice in a podcast full of talking about technology is probably the most important thing. To
I
go
know.
outside,
I know.
be real, be human. A great sentiment.
Yeah.
Ryan, thank you so much for
Thank you,
being
man.
a
This
part
is
of the
fun.
podcast. I really appreciate getting to hang out with you, and look forward to the next time. Thanks for sharing all your experience and insights and wisdom with the community.
Cool. Hope somebody found it valuable.
But yeah, it seems like a bunch of people did already, and then we'll definitely go out there and live on. So
Cool.
we'll love to have you back sometime.
Thanks for
And
having me. I really appreciate it.
of course, yeah, appreciate it
Cool.
too. All right. Well, thanks to everybody
Thank
who
you.
was here today. Thanks for asking great questions and being a part of this discussion. Look forward to another episode in another couple of weeks, and we'll be announcing some awesome new stuff for the Inner Circle coming out. We've had a new launch coming in January, but if anyone wants to come and be a part of that for some of the Comfy UI series in December, do reach out, ask us questions about it before the launch is a good time to join, but it will always be a good time to join. But thanks, everybody. Really enjoyed today. Thank you again, Ryan.
See ya.
We'll see you all again
Bye,
soon.
guys.
Take care,
Bye.
everybody.